My name is Campbell McPherson, and I'd like to talk to you today about my third book, which is co-authored with my wife, Jane, and it's called You Part 2, Thriving in the Second Half of Your Life. Kirsty Young, a wonderful lady from the BBC broadcaster, calls it a clear-headed, invigorating and inspiring guide to the rest of your life. It's co-authored with Jane to make sure it wasn't a man in his 50s writes about not retiring book, and it's meant for everyone. It's really focused. The core target audience is those of us who are 45 plus. The first half of our life is over. The good, the bad, the ugly is all behind us. It's over. There's nothing we can do about it except for learn. And what we now need to do is to work out, how can we thrive? How can we flourish? What can we do with the rest of time that is ahead of us? The genesis of the book, it really came a bit late to me, to be perfectly honest, because it was my 55th birthday when suddenly my inbox was inundated with ads for Viagra and for Tenement adult nappies, and with pension companies telling me I could now take 25% of my pension pot, out as cash. And I was hit by images of grey hairs and no hairs wistfully looking up from their gardening kneeling pads, or from old people, there you go, grey-haired people who are very content, obviously, but old people sitting on benches and wistfully overlooking the ocean, presumably waiting for the nurse to come and collect them. And I was just incensed. It was as though in the game of life, marketing directors had placed me onto a part of the board that was marked for old and irrelevant. And it was ridiculous, because I'd finally worked out what it was I was good at. I finally worked out what I was never going to be any good at. And I have another 30, 40 years of fabulous life ahead. So this is our time. And in fact, if I take you through the little chapters of the book very quickly, the first section is called This Is Our Time, because it's about the fact it's only a number. We talk about ageism and how it's ubiquitous. It's illegal, but it's rife in the world of business, and we see it everywhere. The key, though, is attitude. We can't let it affect us whatsoever. And in fact, the key to longevity, the key to a thriving and flourishing life is actually attitude. People with the right attitude to the second half of their life end up living about 7 years longer, according to one of the studies in the book. The second chapter is all about change, and the second part of the book is all about change. That's what I do for a living. I help leaders to lead change, and I help people to embrace change. My wife, Jane, is a brilliant yoga teacher who does exactly the same thing, but in an even more profound way. So my favorite chapter in the book is called Menopause versus Menopause. Yes, cheesy, I know, but the menopause section of that Jane wrote is the best part of the entire book. But we also talk about the paler male equivalent, that even though they shouldn't be compared and they can't be compared, there is something that goes on with males from the age of 45. But you can read a bit more about that. Kirsty Young's favorite chapter is Radical Acceptance and the Holy Grail of Contentment. And the term radical acceptance I will go through in greater detail in another video. Part 3 is about rethinking retirement. Retirement is not about fading away. It's not about stopping and dying. It's just about what are we going to do once the natural full-time employment comes to an end. And actually, we can start planning that a lot earlier. We talk about changing careers. We talk about working in the second half. We talk about how to start your own business, because 50% of us, 50% of small businesses are run by people over 50, and they are more successful. So we also have some great stories from some entrepreneurs who have started their businesses at 40, 50 and 60 that I know you're going to love. Section 4 is all about aged care. We needed to learn about aged care, so we researched it for the book, and we have examples from Australia, or examples from the UK, and obviously examples from the US as well, about navigating the aged care labyrinth. And it'll be a great starter if you haven't experienced that already for your parents. The biggest section is probably money, and it talks about how can we fund the second half of our life. Now, I'm not a financial planner, but I've worked in financial services for 30 years, so it's really tips from a financial services insider. And it starts with a chapter called "And Then a Miracle Happens," which is my take on financial planning. Now, that chapter sounds as though it might be dull to some of you. It isn't. In fact, the whole book is extremely easy to read. And I talk about what I've learned about in financial services and what good looks like in that strange and complicated industry. And the last chapter, the last section, is about meaning, purpose, relevance, and it's about you. You Part 2, Thriving in the Second Half of Your Life. It's available from Amazon.co.uk. It's available in Australia from Booktopia, and it will be published in the US in June. There's also a website, youpart2.com. Check it out, and I hope you enjoy the book.